This vignette is about RStudio and what I call friends. That is, well, it'll be clear in a second. What I'm going to do here is list very briefly a bunch of programs that essentially are all made or maintained heavily by Posit. And these programs are very useful when you're programming in R. And so I want to give a brief overview with the sort of warning that essentially I will be going through most of these programs in much more detail in separate vignettes. The first thing I'll point out is, okay, so it's Posit is the name of a company that makes RStudio. They used to be called RStudio, but they changed their name a year or two ago. They did and still do a lot of development of the R universe, and even on the open source side of things. I'll point out that they are a for-profit company. They sell pro versions of their open source products. I'll say that recently they seem, I mean, they've probably grown to the point that they do need to maintain their activity, and so they've gone quite bossy in terms of, not bossy, I shouldn't say this, but they have manifested the desire to sell products a lot. And so when you connect to the website now, there's a lot of things that appear to be commercial, but I will point out that they still maintain a very healthy and strong open source philosophy, and so the programs that you get on the open source version of their products are still really good. The commercial ones are more interesting, they have more features, but you can definitely do a lot of work even with the open source versions. Let me detail the different programs that there are. So as I said, RStudio is their base product, and so if you go to the website, you can see there's a RStudio, but you see, as I was pointing out, there is a pro version and etc. But you can still, if you go download RStudio, you will see that you can download RStudio, the free version, and as I said, you can definitely live using the free version. The pro version is not required. And I will not be using in these vignettes anything that is out of the pro version. There's a download link that takes you where I was saying. So they explain, so first you install R, as we've explained in the previous vignette, and then you install RStudio, sorry, and there are versions for Windows, for Mac, for a variety of Unix distributions. I will come back to RStudio quite a few times during the other vignettes, and so I'm not going to detail it very much here. I'll just point out that it's an integrated development environment, so it's a very comfortable place to actually do some coding. As I said, I'll dig into much more detail about this later in later vignettes. Many times in many of the Posit software, there is a server version, and these server versions are really, really useful, except that they're typically useful if you are a Linux user. They So for instance, RStudio is this development environment that we'll come back to in other vignettes, but RStudio server is the equivalent system that lives on a Unix server and allows users to connect to remotely to perform the same exact type of operations that you would do in RStudio, but from a distant machine. So as a use case, I would point out the way I became used to RStudio server is I work on Chromebooks, which now have an inherent Linux core that you can access. So you can install RStudio on a Chromebook, but it used to be that it was much more difficult. And so what I would do is I would run an RStudio server on a machine, and I would connect to it with my Chromebook so that I could perform computations even without the capacity to install the program on my Chromebook. As far as I can tell, there's no proper mechanism implemented within RStudio server to sort of automatically update. So this is something that you'll have to do programmatically within the Linux shell. This is something I might describe later. I'm not planning for now to have something about this, but this is easy to do. Another product that it's not per se an RStudio product, but RStudio and Posit has done a lot of work on this. It's what's called RMarkdown. So RMarkdown is Markdown, which is a sort of very simple text editing software. I mean, it's about as simple as it comes. Not software, environment. Okay, so it's a programming language like LaTeX, for example, to make text presentations, but it is a very basic one, and I'll have a vignette about this. Okay, but RMarkdown, what it does is it allows you to incorporate R commands within a Markdown document. This allows you to run R code as you're generating text. And it's very useful to produce, for example, HTML files, PDFs, or doc, like in Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Word, sorry. So it's useful to produce doc files. It can also make slides, etc. And as I said, there's a specific vignette about this. Sweave is LaTeX. It's pure LaTeX in this case. Like RMarkdown allows you to do incorporate LaTeX commands, but it's Markdown, whereas Sweave is proper LaTeX, in which you put R commands. So this is really nice if you want to generate PDF reports. It's also very nice if, for example, you produce slides using Beamer. This is really probably the best way to produce Beamer slides. It's not used as much as RMarkdown or Quarto these days, probably because the output is mostly PDF. But if you are generating PDF only, then this is probably a very good option. And again, there's a vignette on this. Quarto is essentially the successor to Sweave and RMarkdown. I'll point out that the slides that you're seeing and that you can download on the repository, they're all created using Quarto and what's called Reveal.js for JavaScript, which is how these web pages, I mean, these slides appear as web pages. And I will have a vignette on Quarto as well. Shiny is a different paradigm. So whether it's RMarkdown, Sweave, or Quarto, the idea is to produce text, text for the web, or slides, or PDF, etc. Shiny is an interactive web page generating program. It allows you to create little web pages that run some R code. And there's a vignette on this as well. It's very convenient if you are making presentations to students, for example, to show how some processes behave. And I will have a vignette on this, and I'll point out that there is, same way as there is an RStudio server version of RStudio, there is a Shiny server version of Shiny, which has the same principle. It runs on a Linux server, and it allows you to display Shiny code. And just to illustrate what's happening, for example, this is make it bigger. This is some Shiny apps that I have put on a website of mine. It's running on a virtual server somewhere on the web. And so, for instance, if you look, let me see, what could I do? I could, sure, for example, let's see if this works. You can see that this is making a plot, and I can change the value. Oops, this is not what I want to do. This is here. I can change the value of something, and as I change those values, the plot is adapted interactively. So this is a very nice way typically to demonstrate a concept that I was saying, for example, to students and so on. And that's it for the tools that as I said, I call RStudio and Friends. And as I said, I will come back to each individual tool specifically in later videos.